The roads narrowed the deeper we climbed, sharp turns and blind fog reducing us to a crawl, but Hearthwick slowly came into view as we crossed the bridge. A steep lane curved up into the clustered town, the roofs pressed tight against the cliffside, as though braced against the river's wind. Stone and brick buildings leaned into one another, their chimneys trailing the last threads of someone's breakfast fire. The streets were mostly empty, save for the soldiers near the square and a few locals keeping their heads down. But outside a narrow brick-fronted bakery, a cluster of His Majesty's men lingered, rifles slung loose, loitering in that idle, territorial manner when something's caught their interest. The car slowed to let another soldier through, and the others saluted once they recognized me with the sort of eagerness I had come to expect. I offered a nod and a wave as I caught a few familiar faces. Officers I supplied during leaner months, men who came to me when no one else would help. A few still owed me, and I made certain they saw I didn't forget. The Commandant's manor sat beside the old stone church, high above the town, where the mist burned more slowly. It wasn't grand, at least not in the ornamental sense, but it carried the kind of presence that needed no decoration. He'd chosen it well, a sentry's roost disguised as a modest estate, authority without force. From up there, you could see the whole valley sprawled beneath you, the rivers meeting like threads pulled taut, the town lying obediently between them, just as he liked it. The car slowed to a stop, and the guards were on me before the engine settled. One opened the door, the other the manor's entry. "Good to see you again, Captain Ashcombe." I returned the handshake, though the shine in his eyes gave the whole game away. Men don't light up like that unless they have gone dull from idleness. The town was lifeless, which meant it wouldn't be long before someone came calling, desperate for diversion and willing to pay whatever price I named. The door closed behind me, sealing in the smell of damp stone and mouldy carpet. So this was the Grand Manor, Alistair's newest conquest, taken from whatever disordered band of rebels called it theirs in the months before. A pair of antique, threadbare armchairs sat like afterthoughts in front of the fire. The rugs were sun-bleached and balding, the mantel lined with brass trinkets that looked like they'd been rescued from a jumble sale. If this was the Commandant's idea of luxury, I could only imagine what my accommodations looked like. "Christian," he said, rising to his feet and setting his glass down. "How are you, my boy?" I took his hand, having a slow glance around the room. "Does it come with modern plumbing, or is that still under negotiation?" He laughed and clapped a hand on my shoulder. "Sit down, lad. You will want a drink before I explain why I dragged you to this wretched edge of the map." I followed him to the fire and sat, waiting for him to finish pouring my whiskey. The reason for my summons hardly mattered. It never did. A provincial problem left to rot too long. A patrol that vanished. Supplies that needed to change hands without appearing to move at all. They didn't call me with explanations or approval. They called me because I saw things finished, and because once I was involved, no one dared to ask any more questions. I took the glass Alistair offered, gave it a quick sip, then set it down on the table between us, already pulling my pen and notepad from my coat. I preferred to dispense with these formalities swiftly. The sooner the task was named and contained, the sooner I could turn my attention to what actually mattered. "Right," I said, flicking open the cover. "So let us discuss the reason I am here, shall we?" He swirled the liquor in his glass and shrugged. "There will be a celebration Saturday next," he said. "Formal, of course. Evening wear, decent whiskey, perhaps some French bubbles for the ladies." He flicked his fingers vaguely towards the hearth. "Music, dancing, all the trappings of civility. People are far easier to manage when they feel included." I jotted it down, the details scarcely worth committing to memory. I managed enough of these affairs to know they differed only in scale. But this town had not yet crossed my path, and I saw no reason to refuse an excuse to linger. "That seems straightforward enough," I said, flipping the page. "And a cake," he said, as he sank a little deeper into his seat. "Something grand enough for the whole town." I tapped the pen against the notepad, recalling the brutal drive through the mountains, with half the road chewed away by landslides, the rest scattered with debris and potholes deep enough to ruin the suspension on any vehicle fool enough to traverse it. Getting a showpiece cake up there intact would take divine intervention, even for me. That will have to come in several parts, I said, and I am not promising it will arrive recognizable, unless you have a local baker friendly enough to the crown not to poison us all. That would be the safer route. Alistair lifted his glass towards me, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth as if he knew something I didn't, and I cannot adequately express how much I hated being the last to know anything. "There is a baker in town who can handle it," he said with a wink. "Lovely girl. English as treacle pudding and Tory blue to the bone still." I circled the word English once, the pressure biting through the paper. My pen slowed, then stopped altogether as my entire arm went limp. They'd never known where the diplomat's convoy fell, only the mountains, only the region, only that the children were scattered amongst the most remote villages. I'd been chasing ghosts for years, every town and half-forgotten holding where the crown still kept a foothold. It was absurd, statistically impossible, and I knew it, but illogical, wasteful hope was the one indulgence I permitted myself, despite knowing better. The one thing that made the rest of it, money, favors, blood, worth the trouble. I looked up to see him studying me with the patience of a man who understood the magnitude of what he held. So he didn't rush, nor soften it. He let the silence stretch, savoring the utter miracle of it all until he finally said, "Grace, Annabel, Rowen." He raised his glass for her and for every name that had never made it home. Her ladyship, God bless her. I closed my eyes as something inside me melted. I cannot describe the sensation any better than that. The distance that governed my life for nearly 16 years collapsed without warning, reduced to a street and a door and the time it would take to walk there. I prepared myself for many endings, but I had never prepared for proximity. That it was this simple unsettled me more than the years of absence ever had. Loss, I learned to accept and contain. Uncertainty became a way of life, but this required adjustment I had not rehearsed. I ran a hand through my hair, trying to force my thoughts back into order, but all I heard was her name echoing inside me. After all the dead ends, the years of searching, the prayers, this was the moment, and I simply wasn't ready. The question left me before I could temper it. My eyes teared, and my voice failed on the first word, thin enough to betray me, and I brought my trembling hand up too late to cover it. "Are you absolutely certain?" Setting his glass down, he flicked it away with the back of his hand. "I will stake my life on it. She is the very image of her mother and has her father's white streak. God rest them." He motioned towards the town beyond the window just as the church bells began to ring next door. "I had her open a tea room for the garrison," he said, "gave the lads a reason to keep watch over her until you got here. I did not want rumours stirring and getting the Earl's hopes up until you had at least laid eyes on her to confirm it." I slipped the notepad and pen back into my coat pocket. "Does she remember anything from before the uprising?" I asked, rising from the chair. I already knew the answer might not be clean. Intelligence briefings about the terrible abuse they endured made that much plain enough. But Grace's raising was guided by my hand once as well. If I taught her anything, it was that obedience bought and resistance cost. I trusted her to understand that survival was not surrender and that yielding now preserved something worth reclaiming later. And more than that, I had faith that whatever they stripped away from her, I would restore. Most of the taken do not, and it made restoration nearly impossible. No answer came at first. He only cleared his throat and leaned forward, his hands unclasping in a shrug. She remembered her full name and how to make a proper sticky toffee pudding, and that is a damn sight more than the rest of them. Is it not? He took a breath and lifted a finger towards me. But as you are steward of Blackmere, I thought it best to leave those matters to you to sort out. It was a blight upon us. One the crown wore like a shackle even now, years after the fires of war were kindled. Most of the returned children had a rough go of it once they were brought back to their families, and some never quite fit in again. The rebels snuffed out who they were and whose blood ran through them, but Grace had been nearly 13 when they took her, old enough to know right from wrong and reality from fantasy, and with any luck, those memories of home still held fast. With the hour upon me at last, I caught myself brushing at lint that wasn't there, smoothing the line of my coat with unnecessary care. A ridiculous habit, considering the circumstances. She had been living on scraps and restraint for years, and here I stood, concerned with creases and collars. Yet birth was a tyranny no amount of time or deprivation erased. Her station still eclipsed mine entirely, blood alone placing her beyond the reach of any man with sense. I wouldn't go to her carelessly or present myself in a diminished state. Whatever had been taken from her, I wouldn't add to it by arriving as anything less than exact. I look presentable then? A laugh escaped him as he motioned towards the door. Elevenses is done, so she is yours for the next few hours. Do try not to frighten the girl. So a grand affair in the Commandant's honour, yes, that was the arrangement. Then let the bunting be strung and the speeches rehearsed. I'd see it all done to perfection because unlike that one-night celebration no one would remember come next year, what I gained in return for it would last generations.